4 p.m. on Monday, the 1st of June, 2020. I officially call this meeting of the Conway City Council to as being open. We will have the invocation by Mayor Pro Tem Shane Hubbard. Mr. Hubbard.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you that we can all be gathered here today. Please keep us safe in these times of uncertainty. Give us wisdom as we make decisions tonight and help guide us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I thought I'd get through this with my mask. I just think it's next to impossible.
That's right.
The Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. We have 2 items under the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve that part of our agenda? Yes, sir.
Right, we accept the, approve the agenda, please.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Ms. Gibbs. Probably seconded motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor with a show of hands, please. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you so much. Then for the agenda itself, the full agenda. Or was that your intent?
That was.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. White. I apologize. So we have approval then. Was that second also for the entirety of the agenda? It was. Thank you so much. Ms. Gibbs, I believe that was yours as well. Thank you so much. And now for the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Mr. Hubbard.
move to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr.
Second, Mr.
Gordon.
Hubbard.
Thank you so much. We have probably seconded motion to also approve the consent agenda. All in favor, show of hands, please. And that motion carries unanimously as well. We'll go on to special presentation A, a discussion of potential affordable housing project in partnership with Echo at the Whittemore School property.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Emmerich.
Good afternoon. I spoke with Joey Smoke a few minutes ago, and he's unable to make it to the meeting this evening. He asked if he wanted to defer it. I think we can handle it in his stead, and if you want to come back and bring him for this, that'd be fine as well. We talked a little bit at the budget retreat about the Whittemore property and looking to see if there's any partners that might be available on an affordable housing sort of development that could work with us on that property. Joey Smoke is the director of Echo, which is the East Coast homelessness organization. Their policy is homes first for their homeless population. They are not shelter first, they're homes first. They're looking for housing options for their folks. Specifically, they're looking at some options for veterans housing. So we met with him at the Whittemore property. He's very interested. He has some federal funding in place for a small portion of that property. He's looking for a larger partner to do a privately funded development as well. But what we were able to glean from that meeting is that the best interest of the city would probably be met if we do some sort of master plan for development for that entire site. It's 10 acres. As you know, there are 46,000 square feet of old school on that property, 36,000 of which are in terrible condition, absolutely not salvageable condition. It's condemned. And we have some issues right now with trespassers on that property in an unsafe manner. That property was damaged heavily in Hurricane Matthew. And when it was gifted to us by the school district, it was already in a depleted state. It's only gotten worse since then. So we're looking to do a partnership with an organization that either would help us offset the costs of demolishing that building or be able to work that demolition into the agreement with that organization. And then if we can facilitate the building of a community center in that partnership as well, I think that's what we're looking to do. But a master plan can help us plan the entire 10-acre site instead of piecemealing off a half an acre here or an acre here, and give us the ability as a city to control not only what that development looks like, but how it functions within the community as well. There could be a series of trails, community gardens, a community center, sidewalks, playgrounds, those sort of things within this development. But doing it piecemeal would probably prevent that from happening. So we already have an architect on staff, the Olio. They were working with us for the historic preservation aspect of this development. They also do master planning. They're already contracted to work with us. What we would like to see is give them the green light at some point to be able to start working on a master plan for the entire site and then seek partners to develop either in pods or the whole thing at one time. And that's sort of what we were going to discuss today, is that Mr. Smoke was going to say that he only really needs 8 units right now, but he might come back and need 50 units later. To do that sort of development, 10 acres is too big for most affordable housing developers to do at one time. So a master plan would give us the ability to make it look like we want to look and make it function like we want it to function. Now, that's my presentation. If there's any questions, I think we give a couple slides. I think there's one more slide with the survey. You can kind of see the largesse of the size as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmerich. Is there any discussion, any questions? Mr. Hubbard?
Yeah, I work real closely with Echo, and I'm sorry Mr. Smoke couldn't be here, and I don't want to speak for him, but they've done something. I think they showed us a slide on John's place. John mentioned, and it's a transition, and it's an alternative for going to the homeless shelter, which is a horrible place. You've never been, you need to go walk through it. They acquired some townhouses and they've made them into, the upstairs is like dorm rooms. There's 2 beds in each bedroom. There's a kitchen, there's a bath and a half. And those guys live there for a period of time, and they have to stay clean, and they have to stay out of trouble, and then they try to find them permanent housing. So they have a big need for permanent housing. And I think that we could probably partner with Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, some other veterans groups, and make this happen. I think that's a wonderful plan for that.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Let's take a Adam, by locking it in with the 10-acre full plan, I'm assuming you have to lock in our zoning for any future development.
Yeah, I think what we would probably suggest is that we do a planned district for the site. It's more than 3 acres, so it qualifies. And again, we would be basically creating it for future development.
Yes, I've been harping on the idea of tiny houses for the last longest, and I would love to have this be a consideration of having some tiny houses in that area also. And it could fit the same thing and be individual homes more or less, but just please consider that.
I think one of the things that we've seen in successful tiny house developments is that if you master plan the site and you have the tiny homes are interconnected into a community and not just individual units, more akin to a trailer park. If you can make it function with amenities, you can make it work and be a successful adventure. I think that's what we're looking at, suggesting to you in a master plan is make everything function together and have it prepared in advance. So then when you have a developer that wants to do tiny houses, there's their pod. They need to make it look like we've designed it. And that gives us the ability to control how it functions.
And it's that functionality that I think is going to be really important to the existing community. There are people, whether right or wrong, who believe that bringing in an element of formerly homeless people will do harm to their community as opposed to making it better. So the buy-in of the area, I believe, is going to be really important as we move forward.
One last thing, and I know I mentioned amenities on the site. I think it because it was acquired with the intent of building a community center and having public amenities for not just the community, but the wider community. I think it's important that we make sure that we still continue to keep that in mind as we develop the plans. But if doing a master planning it would be sort of reopened again to the public for input on how it's going to look, how it's going to function, and what it's going to do.
Absolutely.
All right.
Anyone else?
And that was a great point, Mayor. That's why I wanted to bring it up, that they don't just take people who are homeless and house them. They make them go through a transition period to know that they can function in that environment and not be a bad element. So I think they're doing a great job.
And that's the message we want to put out.
Get 2 more behind you there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hammond.
And Mayor, I was simply just going to, if it's the appropriate time, I was going to make a motion that we allow staff to work with our architect and create a master plan, developing this into a planned district. But I don't know if Larry had a question.
I did have a question. may I question first? I will carry the motion.
Well, if I can just say that
Well-
it's an item for discussion, so I don't, if you just instruct me to continue with our relationship with them, it doesn't need to have a motion.
My question, not question, but a statement is to also maybe include a father's place in this doing, because we do some of that same teaching at a father's place, the job skills and all that good stuff. So that would be a good partner to add into that
Fantastic.
area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item B, a discussion on the permitted uses in the heavy industrial zoning district for the City of Conway Unified Development Ordinance in comparison to surrounding areas.
Our zoning administrator, Tim Wilson, and Mayor Bella Heights are going to present this. Also, we received notice from Taylor, who's watching this, after they want to speak into their microphones, so that this will be more.
And Mayor, we also have someone outside for this item. I'm going to make sure that.
Please. Okay, thank you.
Which agenda?
I just wrote it down.
Welcome.
I'm sorry. This is a discussion on the permitted uses in the HI zoning district, for the City of Conway Unified Development Ordinance in comparison to surrounding areas. At a previous workshop, staff discussed a proposed use in the HI district that was denied by staff. That use was a massage therapy business proposed to be conducted within an existing business location. It was approved in 2015 as a scientific lab. The owner of the drug and alcohol testing facility wishes to add additional services to his business, including employee wellness programs, DOT physicals, chiropractic services, and massage therapy. The applicant inquired about potentially rezoning some of the parcels around his, including this parcel in the top left there where the business is actually being conducted, to a zoning district that would permit the proposed uses. Staff was asked to provide additional information regarding the permitted uses in the HI district along with current uses in the immediate area. So the HI district is intended to reserve areas for otherwise noxious uses that would not mix well with other commercial districts. Some of the uses that you'll typically find in heavy industrial or that are allowed would be athletic fields, outpatient treatment facilities, adult-oriented establishments, bail bondsmen, tattoo parlors, research facilities, science labs, truck and railroad terminals, container switchyard and storage, wholesaling, storage, and distribution type centers. Medical services, personal services are not permitted in the HI district, but they're permitted outright as a conditional use in several other commercial zoning districts. So staff also looked at surrounding jurisdictions to see if massage therapy was permitted in industrial districts, including Myrtle Beach, Horry County, and Georgetown County, and none of them permit massage therapy in industrial zones. The only district that the city has that the applicant could request to be rezoned to is the institutional district, as it will allow both for the science laboratory and medical uses, including massage therapy. However, doing so could cause other businesses in the strip center to become non-conforming. And also the inclusion of surrounding parcels in the rezoning to avoid a spot zoning would limit the surrounding parcels' ability to have industrial uses. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
I see that you have the pet grooming in this list. Does that also include boarding?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm having a lot of trouble knowing who wants to speak just because of
Forgive me, would it be possible just to sort of situate a semicircle so we can see each other?
And move staff closer to the center. I was thinking the same thing. I just didn't know if we could do it now. It's almost impossible.
We can orient you to some extent. We can't, the mics are fixed
I see.
in the ground, but we can do it to some extent with council. If you want to break for 1 second, Mayor, we can try to adjust desks.
I'll call a break and let's see if we can make it just a little bit easier for me to interact with the rest of the council.
All right. And Jeff, can you monitor the camera feed, see how it's going to look?
And we recognize that you've worked really hard to make this happen, but
learners with us?
Absolutely.
But you did it
Absolutely.
Trying to keep you six.
How's this?
It's not a slide that will get closer.
Microphone on. Well, I like this better.
Can we,
We did something different on this side than we did.
I can do that for a while.
I can't go very far. I don't have my wire.
We can pull you in.
Well, I think that's what they just made us say. If she can move back, that's fine. They unhooked me. Yeah, there you go. I'm fine. Going anywhere else. I thought about you.
Yeah.
Good luck. Well, I'll go to bed.
Just don't trip over the boards, please. I learned that at Carolina.
That's a good thing.
Keep Jeremy out of the room too.
Jeff, are we all visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for your help. Thank you for the wonderful idea of GoVent. And we've just heard a presentation on the heavy industrial designation in our zoning district, I should say. Are there comments or questions from the council? Mr. Unring.
the outpatient treatment facility, that is permitted, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Just trying to figure out the difference between that and, or that being a non-medical. It seems to me like that would be medical, but.
An outpatient treatment facility would be similar to like a methadone clinic. So it would be where people would go to get those types of services. That would be considered a more noxious use. Prior to that amendment, the city had no zoning designations for outpatient treatment centers. So it could potentially be challenged or could have been challenged that because we didn't have a designation or location for that, they would have been allowed anywhere that allowed medical services.
Are mental health outpatient treatment facilities allowed in highway, heavy industrial areas?
If it's classified as an outpatient treatment center, it could be, although the ordinance that we wrote was geared more towards the drug and alcohol treatment.
Right, I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out what does fit, even though our design was leaning in a certain direction. Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Howard?
When you say a noxious use, it seems to me that if you're down zoning and using something and you're willing to do it, your customers are willing to come. I really, can you rename it?
You mean rename?
Massage outpatient therapy?
I'm not sure. That would be it. We would definitely have to look into that. And again, like I stated, we did look at surrounding jurisdictions and they do not permit massage therapy in their industrial zones. So that would be in keeping with what we have around us. You want to try to keep industrial uses together. You want to have a location that you can have, if it were ever requested, a tattoo parlor, for example. You can only have that in an industrial zoning district. You can't have that in a medical zoning district. So if you started allowing other uses and then you say a tattoo parlor cannot be within so many feet of other uses, which we have, then you would be limiting the places that those types of uses could go. The same thing goes for adult entertainment establishments. They can't be within so many feet of schools, of residential districts, churches, and things like that. So the idea is to kind of keep those types of uses in one type of area. And Commerce Plaza, the Atlantic Center, those are all designated more for your industrial type uses.
If the owner of an establishment is requesting that they be allowed in a place, well, they're already there, as I understand it, that would be heavy industrial by its designation. What else is to be lost by them? It's sort of, so I understand what you're saying, and I'm on that side. I'm just trying to figure out what ultimately there is to be lost if an existing use is continued. What some of the things we talked about earlier had to do with their complaining once a rock crushing concern comes next door, or that kind of movement, just in terms of what's next to what.
Yeah, I mean, if you start, let's say that the institutional zoning district was allowed, then you have to know that anything that's permitted in the institutional zoning district, which would allow the use that he is proposing, along with the laboratory, you're also allowing student housing, for example. There's a host of other issues that could be arisen from that, because then if you have a student housing project that moves on to those properties that are now vacant, for example, around this particular property, and they wanted to build something like that, then you could open it up 2 years down the road. If a rock crushing plant or something were to come through, they would by right be able to do that, but then it could cause issues for the people that may reside in an institutional zoning district.
As we spread further into rural areas, what are currently rural areas, are we producing more heavy industrial zoning opportunities, or what do you sort of see as our outlook? We're moving out 378, for example. Is that allowing more space for these uses?
There is the desire of the public through multiple workshops we had with the land use element, that their desire to see those types of uses is further out on 378 and not in the city limits of Conway. So the desire is to keep the industrial type uses further on the outskirts of the city and not more inside the city. And there are actually a couple of parcels on 378 that were recently zoned to heavy industrial.
Jim was going to add something to it.
Yeah, if you speak to the EDC or any of the economic development groups, there is a shortage of heavy industrial zoning in the county right now, including in the city. Losing the ability to utilize some property for heavy industrial uses could be detrimental to the future economy. Maybe not now, but it could be down the line. It would limit certainly things. To give an example also of how something may not impact something now, but it could be in the future. If you look at the Wild Wing development, and as it's grown up, it's gained more residents. It came in right next to an industrial user, which was Blue Max Trucking, Vulcan, all those things. They moved in next to, but they're the ones who also have the biggest public input when we have anything in those places. So we've got to be careful not to expand a use to the point where we're creating a conflict in the future that may not exist today. And that's just where I stand on it.
It just seems like in this instance, adding maybe a conditional use. When I see the fitness center, and I think about the old fitness center that used to have at Conway Hospital, it had a massage lady that did massage. The very name, Carolina Drug and Alcohol Testing Services, to me sounds like treatment. And that I know that a lot of the stuff dealing with DOT physicals, employment physicals, you've lost your CDL, for instance, you have to go through treatment in order to get it back. That's part of the DOT physicals as well as some of the other treatment. I'm just, rather than changing it from heavy industrial to institutional, just wanted additional Taking the conditional use might be the better way to do it.
Well, I just am a little confused in so much that we keep getting developers buying blocks of land further and further out from the city, some of which are in the city and then some of which are not. But we're sandwiching some of these heavy industrial parcels, let's call them that, in between them. And is that, I mean, I don't know how this fits. I guess we don't know what's coming, but
And that's just it. You know, that's the whole purpose of reserving areas for heavy industrial uses that we have. So that way you do have properties that are reserved for those rock crushing plants, for those asphalt companies or concrete batching plants that may seek to locate cell towers right now. It has to be an industrial use. If someone wants to do a cell tower, it has to be an industrial use. So those are industrially zoned property. So those are all things that you have to think about. The only alternative, and speaking of what Mr. Hyman was saying, was that there are instances where a use would be allowed and only contingent upon it being an accessory use to an existing business. I know that the county, they had a medical, you couldn't have a tattoo parlor unless it was in a doctor's office or something of that nature. So, you know, that is the only thing that I could think that you could do, but whether or not you would want to do that in a heavy industrial area is the issue.
Yes, sir.
I'm the owner of the company. Might trust the council for a moment.
I think that might be proper, please.
If you don't mind coming to the mic, introducing yourself and giving your address, please.
My name is Craig Burke. I'm the owner of Carolina Drug and Alcohol Testing Services. To clarify, the services that we provide are employee screening services. So when people are going to hire their new employees, they would send them to us. We would conduct their background checks, their drug screens, and make sure that they're safe to come to work. We also do physicals for them to make sure they're physically able to do those jobs that they're being hired to do. So I just want to clarify the services we provide in that. So it's more of an occupational health type of service in the sense that we do the drug testing there. But it's primarily for the purposes of employee screening. We do work with attorneys, we do work with the courts, we do work with social services, and we do provide drug and alcohol testing services for them as well. The services that we're literally looking to, that we've been providing as an accessory, if you will, because it really pairs into that employee screening part, is we do background checks. We do employment physicals. We do DOT physicals. We do ergonomic assessments. We have a chiropractor that helps companies making sure that their staff is being safe, using the right procedures, using the right processes to make sure that they're not hurting themselves in the process. So, we do OSHA safety audits and things like that. So there's a lot of accessory uses within the business that we have. And I appreciate the value of heavy industrial, but I think there's one thing that's really concerning to me right now is that if we're going to look at the bigger picture from the 10,000-foot view, just a couple of years ago, the city allowed a large apartment complex to be built directly abutting the heavy industrial area. In fact, changed one of the parcels from heavy industrial to be annexed to the larger parcel so that they could allow for a driveway to go up Bellamy Ave. Okay, so that parcel was heavy industrial until it was annexed by the larger parcel and a zoning change was made to an institutional zone to allow for those apartments to be built. Now, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want a rock crushing company next to my apartment complex. And I'm just, the city is changing, the city is evolving. And I'm kind of concerned that if you look at what's existing right now in this heavy industrial zone, all of my neighbors, all of the neighboring business centers there are no rock crushing companies. There are no lumber, treatment companies. There's accountants, there's, home offices for custom home builders. There's a tattoo place. They're not heavy industrial where they're creating a lot of dust, noise, and pollution. I guess my concern is there's two ways of looking at it. One, from my perspective as a business owner in this, I'm just looking to be able to use and to continue the operations that I've been doing in offering the occupational health services, which include the use of a chiropractor to do some of those services as well. The massage therapist was recently brought on, and that's kind of what opened up Pandora's box, if you will. So I just want to be clear on the services that we are providing and what we're really looking at. But bigger picture for that area, I think if we take a serious look at what's actually there presently for businesses, you'll find that there's no heavy industrial. Some light industrial maybe, but mostly it's professional offices and smaller manufacturings or shipping companies and things like that. So we've got everything from, offices for a street sweeping company to an office for home health care right next door to me. And the final thing I want to bring up, and this is May 2019 was when the latest revision came into play for this. So my business has been in location since 2015. Before May 2019, opticians and hearing doctors were permitted in the heavy industrial zone. So there were other medical facilities, not just the outpatient clinics and things like that. So before 2019, opticians and and hearing doctors were both allowed in the heavy industrial zone. I'm not looking to pick a fight with the city. I would love to keep my location and I want to stay in business. All I'm asking is, would you please allow me can we work together to find a way so that I can continue to use and provide the services that we're providing as a company? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your input. This is a special presentation. Are there other questions or comments from the council? Or from staff? Mr. Hubbard, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you the owner of the property or do you lease the property?
I lease the property.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I guess what we need from y'all is direction on whether we should draft an amendment to the ordinance and how you would like that crafted or where you would like us to go next.
I think the reason there's so much silence is that there's some big question marks. I listened intently to everything that the council members have said. I get what staff is trying to get us to look forward to, just in terms of how this may impact our future. I also get, for example, what Mr. Hyman says about similarity in other services that are being captured under heavy industrial that are so similar. It would be hard for me to explain to somebody why yes to one and no to another. Is anybody clearer than I am on this? Are we ready to give staff some direction, or do we need some time to? Mr. Hyman, please.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we direct staff to.
Mr. Hyman, pardon me, at this point, we can't move to take any action, but we can certainly hear your point on how you would want staff to be directed.
I mean, if we want staff to look at it as secondary uses, and again, it sounds to me, I'm not sure if what he was talking about is even massage therapy. I mean, having a chiropractor looking at OSHA and that kind of stuff, that's a little different. I think it's something that definitely needs to be looked into. I would ask that we consider asking our staff to look into possibly amending it or looking at other conditional uses in that heavy industrial zoning. I do agree with staff that we don't need to change it. And I don't think that it would be proper to change it when the landowner's not here. But I do think that there's such similarities in what we're saying you can't do and what you can do. With that being said, I know one thing that came up before is we discussed whether or not there was separate business licenses and that kind of stuff. I do think that's something that needs to be fleshed out as well.
Understood. Ms. James?
I don't think I'm very clear, and I'm not sure any of us are, as to what should go in this particular piece versus any other piece. That maybe we need to look at all the places that could be considered to be rezoned as heavy industrial and see what's already there, what needs are there. I'm not ready to do anything on this.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I think that is sort of what I'm feeling from the council. Maybe we need a full-blown workshop. Because there are a lot of similarities, there are a lot of disparities. I mean, I just need to understand before we take an action that we regret later. I would prefer that we understand it better. Yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion that you don't have to follow, but you could send this to Planning Commission to study further and come back with a recommendation for council if you'd like.
Ms. James?
I would like to do it myself.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. So if we could just set aside some time and look at all the particulars, make sure that we're well aware of what is allowed and what isn't. And it's that fine line, I think, that we have trouble with. It's where you can have, where you can do drug testing, but you can't do outpatient. You can do some outpatient things, but you can't do outpatient massage. I think that's where the rubber hits the road, where we can't make the distinction between whether it should be or not. I'm sorry, sir, I'm not going to be able to have you speak again, but thank you for offering. But I think what the council is saying to staff is that we just need to sit until we understand it better so that we come up with a solution that makes the best sense. And we will consider what you said. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. The next discussion is item C, a discussion of amendments to the UDO regarding modular manufactured structures in the commercial zoning district. Also, Ms. Hutz.
All right, so over the last several months, staff has had more people inquire about either using a manufactured or a modular structure for commercial buildings. The city prohibits manufactured or mobile homes as being used residentially or for any other use currently. However, the ordinance only addresses modular homes as being permitted for residential use, not commercial use. So during a review of a project, Myrtle Beach Rail Yard, which is located off Acre Avenue, also zoned heavy industrial, staff noticed that their site plan appeared to have a structure proposed that may be manufactured and not site-built. Upon requesting more information, the applicant confirmed that they plan to place a mobile or manufactured unit out on site for their office. So because our ordinance doesn't address manufactured or modular units specifically built for commercial purposes, the applicant was informed that they would not be permitted to have the manufactured structure without a possible amendment to the ordinance. And since that time, the applicant revised their plan to include a site-built structure instead. This just kind of shows an example of what they had originally proposed. But given the location of the project and the surrounding uses, including the ability to have metal buildings in the industrial zoning districts, staff put together an amendment to the ordinance to clarify what a manufactured versus a modular structure is other than residential, and to permit such structures in the light industrial and heavy industrial zoning districts that are not located in the Gateway Corridor Overlay or the Village Corridor Overlay. The proposed amendment would further permit modular buildings in other commercial districts, as modular homes are already permitted as single-family structures, with the condition that such buildings comply with the city's design standards, as well as all applicable building codes. Another situation that we've run across is currently a violation in a suspected mobile home that is being used commercially. So that is another situation that is not permitted to happen. I think it's a manufactured home. We're going to have to ask for some evidence on that. But because our ordinance doesn't specifically say you can't use a modular structure as a commercial building, that's where we need the clarification. And then on the right there's just some examples of other buildings that are considered modular buildings, and the building code does allow for those types of units to be used.
Just for our clarification, I think I know the difference between a mobile unit and a modular unit. Can you describe fundamentally what the differences are, please?
Sure. A manufactured or mobile structure is a factory assembled structure that is movable or portable, equipped with the necessary service connections, and made to be readily movable as a unit on its own running gear and designed to be with or without a permanent foundation. A modular building unit would be any building of closed construction. They're typically constructed off-site in accordance with the current International Building Code for wind loads in our area, and then they're transported to their ultimate site and assembled on a permanent foundation.
Thank you so much. Mr. Robert, just before I get to you, may I ask a question? The first photo, the white unit with the carport, it appears to be, is that a mobile home that has just gotten a longer roof and added a carport? Is that currently one of the?
I'm sorry, that's not a carport. That's just the blacked out,
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
name of
I see.
the building
I
on
see.
that. Yeah.
But you're saying that's a mobile structure as well?
I do believe so. And actually this property was annexed into the city a few years ago. So the building was on there, but it was our understanding at the time that it was going to be a retail building put there with some retail uses that would service the student housing community that was built around it.
Right, and that would matter whether or not we allowed it?
Well, we do annex properties all the time that do have mobile homes on there, and they're considered legal non-conforming if they are properly permitted and currently in use.
Yes.
But for commercial purposes,
It would
no.
not be.
The only time that we would allow any type of mobile structure or mobile home is if it's a sales office, and that would be for a maximum period of 1 year. They would have to get a temporary certificate for that, and it would have to be located on the property that is being developed.
Right. Good, thank you so much. Mr. Hubbard?
It's my understanding that even a mobile unit, if you place it on a permanent foundation, you can do away with the DMV title. And I don't know, did that come into consideration at all?
No, that's not, Robert might be able to speak to that better than me. Because mobile homes is a term that was used prior to 1976. After 1976, they're referred to manufactured, and they are built a lot differently. But building code does differentiate between what's a manufactured structure versus a modular structure, and Mr. Cooper might be able to address that better than me.
Having a DMV title or not does not negate the construction of the unit.
Mr. Hubbard, I'm sorry.
What Shane was talking about is called retiring a mobile home title. It's not as easy as just throwing bricks under it. But the other thing with that to think about is when you're talking about your tax basis, I don't know how you're going to tax it if it hasn't been retired as a business as far as the structure. I know my office, I pay a lot more taxes on than I do my home. I don't know how you would do that with a mobile home if it's not taxed. I mean, I know the ground's taxed, but if they haven't retired a mobile home, you can't tax it for commercially.
And that's the consequence of it having a DMV title as opposed to.
That's right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mr. Emery?
One thing that Jessica didn't mention too is that we spend a lot of time worrying about aesthetics of our commercial corridors. And we do not allow mobile homes or manufactured homes as a residential unit, but we're considering now whether we need to allow them as a commercial unit despite our aesthetic standards that we have in place. And I just want you to make sure that, that is what it looks like now without us while we're having this discussion. So
That's right. Oh, what I don't pick up on, Ms. Hux, is whether or not your lean is towards, what is the unit that is not mobile?
Modular.
The modular. Are you leaning towards, you said there's no ordinance now that allows modular commercial buildings.
The UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, does not speak to modular. It just modular homes is
Right.
what it speaks to.
Exactly.
And there is a section that prohibits mobile homes to be used residentially or for any other reason. So what I had suggested when looking at this was that if you permit manufactured structures, that because the industrial districts already allow metal siding, you can have metal buildings all day long in an industrial district. that considering where, this property is located, way off Highway 501, it's not in an overlay, that would be subject to design standards, and in fact, heavy industrial and light industrial are exempt from the design standards that we have in our ordinance, that if you chose, you could allow those types of structures in the heavy industrial and light industrial district, so long as it's not in an overlay.
I understand. I think I hear. It's early for you to have to make a recommendation, but I think I hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
All right. Ms. Timms.
I have two questions that I'm not real sure of either one of them. Robert, this first one goes to you, I think. When we studied these modular and mobile homes a long time ago on council, I thought that I remembered that there was some type of different construction used because it was manufactured versus hauled in, and it was more load bearing for storms, et cetera. Am I correct on this or not?
It has a removable frame. They bring it in with a frame and they set it on permanent foundation or remove the frame that makes it mobile. And it is tied down exactly like a house would be.
Well, I was thinking more of the bracing, whatever.
Yeah, a lot of times they are built a little better.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. And I mean, I think there is a difference. It's not the same apple and apple. We're getting a more quality product with the modular home than you are a mobile home. I also go back to what you said a little while ago about we should be considering whether to do this type of thing in what district, despite the fact.
Well, I think Jessica mentioned it too, within an overlay especially, we spend a lot of time, you've spent a lot of time drafting ordinances, and we spend a lot of time reviewing ordinances to make sure that the aesthetics of our corridors are maintained.
Yes.
And oftentimes when you build a stick-built building or a building that you've spent a lot of time in construction, you get a higher quality product that is more in keeping with the aesthetics that we're shooting for. You can do that with a modular building, but it's much more difficult to do so within a manufactured building.
Yeah,
And
do it with the mobile
right.
home.
That's right.
That's what I was thinking. Well, on the same page. Thank you. It's hard to pull it up from 15 years ago, I guess.
I was gonna try to make a joke, but Jessica stole my thunder. I do, but I agree with you. I'm all about modular and mobile, metal buildings, ugly buildings, despicable looking buildings, and industrial. When I think of industrial, that's what I think of. You know, if you haven't cut the grass in a few weeks, that's okay. It's industrial. So that's sort of where I stand on that, but limited to industrial.
Yes, as long as it's not located in a gateway corridor overlay. The gateway corridor overlay is 500 feet on either side of the road on your major corridors coming into and out of the city. So any of those properties would not qualify for that.
I can't figure out in my head how far 500 feet is. Would that make it, would that give you an inability to see it as you drive by? 500 feet, or is that,
In most cases.
or would it just be a blur as you drive by?
Well, because of the buffering that we do require in heavy industrial and even in highway commercial, depending on where it lines up, you're going to have some buffering anyway. But most of the time, the 500 feet is going to apply to the properties that are right adjacent to 501. It may involve the property behind it too, but in most cases, that's going to be it.
I'm thinking primarily of the Horry County School District, which is, I don't know how far off of 501, but it's more than 500 feet. What happens if we throw a bunch of stuff like this in between? I don't know. I just don't like the idea of, and I think it goes back to what I said a little while ago, in that we've got nice districts and then we're planting things in the middle. And I'm having a little problem deciding what can go where.
So what you're saying, Ms. Timms, if I might ask, is if we're talking about 500 feet off of 501, but on 4 Mile Road.
Yeah.
But there may be enough space that it's the ugly building, pardon me, the unattractive building then sits too close to the school district buildings.
Well, we don't want to tear down the things. I mean, now that's not a wonderful building either, but the point is we don't need to make it worse. I don't know. I don't know where things can go. So when I vote for something to go there, I don't know what I'm doing.
And just to clarify, and there are, I understand it does get confusing, even for me after all this time. Your village corridor overlays is just a few roads that interconnect between your village corridor overlays. So that's going to be your Mill Pond Road is going to be your village corridor overlay, but 4 Mile Road would not be. So if you had a property that was zoned industrial along 4 Mile Road, they could put a metal building up all day long if it was zoned industrial, because it doesn't fall within those overlays that limit that.
Mr. Hubbard?
Ms. Timms reminded me of something. How would that affect portable classrooms? Would that be a county issue?
It does not affect portable classrooms. We have a special section in our ordinance. Temporary certificates can be given to educational facilities to have portables for a period of 5 years and a maximum of 10 years if needed.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Similarly to the last item, I believe that we've heard everything you said. I think maybe we're a bit clearer on this one. I certainly lean towards what everybody said, but Mr. Goldfinch made a really good point, and that has to do with something that's set apart from an overlaying situation that is away from everything, that is an office structure that's seated in the center of a heavy industrial area. I don't either have a problem with their building being ugly. So is this an issue because, why is that an issue?
Are you asking why they couldn't do this now?
No, I know why they can't do it now. I think the issue, I was going to pose it myself, but I was afraid I couldn't, and maybe I can't. But I think you said that we were told that this building was either stick-built or...
We had a suspicion that it was a mobile structure during site plan review, so I requested some more information, and that's when I was made aware that yes, in fact, it was going to be a mobile structure. But because our ordinance is not very clear when it comes to those industrial zones, and it's not a home, it's actually built for commercial purposes, our ordinance isn't very clear.
That's right.
And the other caveat is a modular structure to be allowed for a commercial building anywhere, not just the industrial zones. So those were the two issues. But for that particular property, it's no longer an issue because they're actually going to do a site-built structure. But we have had other people inquire about, if not mobile, could they do a modular structure?
I personally would not be opposed to there being a modular structure where it is allowed, that as it is allowed for residential, that it be allowed in heavy industrial for an office space as well. That's just generally how I see what I'm hearing. I don't know if anybody else wants to commit one way or the other at this point. Mr.
And I
Emery.
think what Jessica's proposing is that, I think captures what you all have been saying, is that modular buildings are allowed where they meet the other architectural standards for commercial purposes, and manufactured are allowed for light industrial and heavy industrial when they're not in a commercial overlay corridor. I think that's what y'all have been saying, but just to clarify, we can
And
bring
I
that
have a
back.
Safety issue about mobile sitting anywhere. I just think for the safety of everybody involved that we should require that it be attached to a firm foundation.
I think that's
wherever it is.
required by code, I'm sure. Yeah.
And if that's the case, yeah, I think you have captured it.
All right. We can bring that back to you if you'd like for first reading after it goes to planning commission.
I think we're ready. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Item D is a discussion of possible amendment to Article 2, definitions, and Article 5, Section 5129, mini storage units of the City of Conway's Unified Development Ordinance. Ms. Hux, you need some water.
I'm good, I think. He's-
I haven't opened my bottle.
I'll be brief because this has been before you before. Back in February, we discussed this. We had several inquiries about businesses looking to locate in existing buildings along Church Street, including the old Bilo and Kmart locations. Both properties are zoned highway commercial. Right now, mini storages are permitted only as a conditional use in the highway commercial, light industrial, and heavy industrial districts, with the most conditions applying to highway commercial property, as those properties are typically located along major corridors coming in and out of the city. Some of those conditions include they're permitted as a secondary use only, meaning you have to have another principal use. An example of that would be Sam's Car Wash on 378. They have the car wash, the laundromat, but then they have the mini storages in the back. They're permitted only in the rear yard of a permitted use. They can't exceed 1.5 times the total square footage of the principal building on the lot. They shall be a minimum of 200 feet from a public right-of-way, and they have to have a 15-foot landscape buffer. It's always been staff's interpretation that the conditions specific to highway commercial are relevant to outdoor mini storage facilities, not indoor. However, because the way the ordinance is written, staff would be unable to approve indoor self-service storage facilities at the aforementioned locations. Staff drafted a proposed amendment that differentiates between an indoor and outdoor storage facility, along with conditions for each type of facility. And the amendment also defines each type of facility. So these were the two locations. And this was a customer that was interested in doing the extra space storage at the old Bilo location. And they had supplied some before and after pictures. And then this were some examples of the CubeSmart storage that was proposed for the old Kmart location. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys may have on that.
Thank you so much. There seem to be no questions. I recall that presentation very clearly. There's not much to dislike about what we see visually. I personally had hoped that in the interim, maybe a food concern would consider the Bilo location. I think that there's so many residents in that immediate vicinity that would so benefit by there being a store, but we can't force that to happen. And as months pass, it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. That's all I have to say about that.
Since you brought that up, about the, that area is, I would say, is considered as a food desert area because there is no grocery stores or food places that they can walk to in that area. So I am totally against putting this type of business there for that reason alone. Not against the business, but just that the need does not fit the community at this time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Anyone else have any comments? Ms. Towns?
I just want to comment on the one at the Kmart position. I am in hopes that someone would go in there that would supplement the remaining stores in that area and it become a shopping district again. This is going to do nothing to draw people to that area unless you're just unloading. And I don't. Again, like Larry, I don't think that the need fits what they're talking about putting there. I don't mind them putting it somewhere else.
Anyone else? So that's all we have to say about that.
So I guess for guidance, are you saying you don't like the ordinance to allow indoor storage, or you don't like it specifically in the places that are mentioned?
Right.
So
that's what I'm saying.
So that begs the question, then if it's allowed by use in a district, highway commercial district, then it would be allowed in any of those empty boxes.
Right, that's why I'm hesitant to say I'd like to have it happen. Maybe Mr. Goldfinch could help us all along.
So thank you, Mayor. You're looking for clarity on, do we like the idea of inside?
There is no ordinance currently on indoor storage facilities. So we're going to bring you a draft of
I rent
allowing
one
it.
Now,
Sorry,
I rent one now in the city.
at Anchor Storage.
No, it's like just a climate control. You walk in,
It's not one of the outdoor ones.
Right.
Yeah, on 16th Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally okay. I mean, I'm like y'all. I mean, yeah, we'd love for a grocery store to go there, but if a grocery store is not going to go there, do we?
It's industrial. Okay.
I
That,
mean-
that one's zoned industrial, so it was loud.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you. I was surprised with yours.
That'd be a good industrial use. I mean, that would be a good place for these storage places to be.
We've had this question because Anchor Storage is open in the Bay Village Shopping Plaza, and the question came up, how are they allowed to do it? But they're not.
Bay Village, is that out in front of Conway High?
Yes,
Okay.
they are not. There is a highway commercial use in front of them, so they're behind that. It is not more than 1.5 times the size, so it meets the other definitions of mini storage. Just happens to be indoor. So that's how they were able to do that. I mean, theoretically, I guess Kmart could do it because they're behind Belk, but it would be much tidier if we had an ordinance to either permit it or not, instead of trying to shoehorn them into something that's existing.
All right, but Kmart's not behind Bill.
So it depends on which way you look at it.
Depends on how you define
Yeah,
behind.
that's right.
Well, I'm behind Mel.
Mr. Hyman,
I mean, it just seems like we're all in favor of it somewhere, just not how we
that's what I'm,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. I feel.
That's clarity for us, I think.
Okay, all right, wonderful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Ms. Hutz, get some water now. We're about to move into item 6, which is public input. Since the COVID, I'm sorry. I know, that's what I'm gonna introduce you. Yes, so since the COVID virus has changed our means through which we communicate and have our meetings, our clerk, Ms. Tessier, has been receiving comments from the public and reporting them at our former Zoom meetings, and she'll continue to do that. We recognize that for regular public input and for public input relative to the ordinances that are coming before us, there may be people waiting. We'll just hear from Ms. Tessier first, and then we'll invite anybody who may be waiting to give their input. Ms. Tessier, if you will, please.
Okay, I received this email from Hillary Howard at Conway Downtown Alive. She said, on behalf of Conway Downtown Alive and restaurants located in the downtown district, I would like to extend our appreciation to council for the extensive and flexibility of outdoor dining. These opportunities have permitted many downtown eateries to continue near capacity service during this economic turndown. We ask council to consider continued implementation of these standards on a permanent basis moving forward. Conway Downtown Alive would be happy to interface with city staff and businesses to develop guidelines that would continue to use the beautiful outdoor spaces and alleys of the historic district. During the past 2 weeks, several restaurants have approached our organization with concerns regarding potential franchisee contracting with the city to operate a food truck hub at the city-owned tractor shed facility. While this type of innovative concept would certainly be a welcome addition to the riverfront area under normal circumstances, these are not normal circumstances. By order, restaurants are operating at 50% capacity and are struggling to stay afloat until restrictions are eased further. We ask that this council consider the significant investment that brick and mortar restaurants have made and continue to make in the downtown district. We are all working together to exhaust every resource available to ensure the continued prosperity of our downtown. The introduction of a food truck hub at this point in time may significantly inhibit the economic recovery of our downtown eateries.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'll ask, and I'm not sure who among our staff will go and check, but is there anyone present for general public input? Would you come forward, please? And as much as we know who you are, would you please first give us your name and your address?
Yes, I'm Terry Bedell, and I am the general manager of the Trestle Bakery and Cafe in Conway.
Yes, ma'am. I need to warn you, you can speak about anything but an individual employee. Of course, we'd want to take that up in a more private session, and you've got 5 minutes to speak.
Okay.
All right. You
First
can
of all,
monitor yourself.
I would like to thank the council for approving the outside dining because that helped us keep our employees working and they did not have to collect unemployment except for about 3 weeks. So we greatly appreciate that you did that. Also, the outside dining has become something very special. It's brought our older customers in the morning to sit outside and enjoy breakfast, and they love it. They just love it. The afternoon brings the middle-aged, younger, and they sit outside and they let their kids play. It's just been awesome. We have gotten so many compliments on the way we've run it. We have followed every guideline and we will continue to follow every guideline to make this happen, to make it be successful. It's something I cannot describe, the feeling that when you approved that we could do it, the boys came over and raided my back porch and front porch and took all my ferns so that we could make it look presentable. We wanted you to be proud of what we were doing. And it's something that we feel Conway needs. We think it would be an added bonus. Greg and Letty Smith back it 150%. And so we're hoping that you will vote to let us keep this. I also know that Sean at Crafty Rooster, he feels the same way. I know Darren at the Bistro, same way. We want to make Conway the place to come to. I've lived here now for 9 years, and I've lived a lot of places in my 69 years on this earth, but I have to tell you, I feel more welcome in Conway than any place I've ever lived. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Bedell, before you go, I want you to know that you do make us proud.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Mhm.
Is there anyone else that we know of? No? All right, is there a motion then to close public input? Open.
In a long time, but I move that we close.
Thank you. Is there a second, Mr. White?
Second.
We have a properly seconded motion to close public input at this time. All in favor with a show of hands. And motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Now we will entertain item 7, public hearing and first reading. Public hearing and first reading of ordinance ZA 2020-0601A, an ordinance to rezone approximately 1,300ths of an acre of property located at 1616 6th Avenue, TMS 13701340111, from the city of Conway medium density residential or R2 to highway commercial. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, and I know the applicant's outside also, so if y'all don't mind, I'm gonna let them know that this agenda item has come up.
Absolutely. And you probably have some public as well. All right. Thank you very much. And when they settle, will you give us another introduction?
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Some for this too? Wonderful. And I'll ask you to go first. Thank you for reminding me, I've forgotten already. Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thanks. Hope you're well. Cooler inside? Oh, good. Have nice trees out. There are a couple of seats left. How do you do, Mr. Jordan? Really good, thank you. Ladies, there are a couple of seats. There are 2 up here. They prefer the rear. Okay. Welcome. And I suppose that is the group. I've asked Ms. Hyman to open this over again and just give an opening. We'll hear public input that came through the city clerk first, and then we'll entertain comments from the public.
Yes, this is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance ZA 2020-0601A, which is an ordinance to rezone approximately 0.13 of an acre of property located at 1616 6th Avenue, TMS 137013411, from City of Conway medium density residential R2 to highway commercial. Staff received this application request. There's an existing, let me get to the slide. As you can see, there's an existing convenience store gas station location on the parcel adjacent to this one. The applicant is intending to combine these two properties in order to have a small addition on this existing convenience store. Because it's zoned residentially, it requires a rezoning in order to combine it with that adjacent parcel. You can see here where that combination plat would come into play. These are some photographs taken of the parcel. You can see this is the parcel behind the convenience store. You can see the back of the existing store. And then this is some photos of the store also. I know we have the applicant here as well as his engineer, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know this is one that you have reviewed previously.
Yes, I do have one question, or I need you to make a statement.
Yeah.
Would the applicant be able to open a convenience store and sell beer and wine if there were no additional building done?
They would.
Okay.
It's already zoned commercial. They could do it tomorrow. They'd have to bring the site into compliance.
Yes.
They're working with staff on that now. They have hired an engineer to work through some of those issues, but the use is already allowed.
Yes. So the only question is whether or not this additional 1/1300ths of an acre might be added to expand his campus.
Correct. And it would also help bring the site more into compliance because right now the back of the existing store doesn't meet the rear setback. So this would give them a little more room on the site in order to come into compliance.
Okay, say a little bit more about that.
Sure.
More space between that and maybe the next residence? Is that what?
Well, yes, it would. It would give a larger buffer. If a residence was built on this parcel, yes, it would be right up against the existing store. But if they were to add this additional parcel, it would give a little more room between this and the next residential parcel.
Okay. And just before we move forward, do we have any sense of the kinds of improvements that the owner intends for the rear of that building with or without the added space?
The rear, from what I understand, they just plan on doing an addition, which would be a cooler on the back, but they're going to be adding some landscaping. They're going to have to improve the parking. They'll have some exterior improvements as well. But the applicant and engineer may be able to add more to that, but that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we'll open the public input portion. I know that we have people here who are interested to speak under public input. First hand I see is the first person I'll call.
Ms. Tessier has some written input as well.
I'm sorry, just that fast, I forgot again. We already have heard from people by phone or other means. We had started having people give their input to our city clerk before we were able to have people come in and speak for themselves. So let's hear from you first. That might warm everything up and we'll get some human speakers once you're done, Ms. Tessier. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. We got a call from Mr. Jordan, who is here but did not wish to speak. He highly opposes due to the increase of his taxes and the high volume of traffic.
Okay. All right. And that's the single
That's it.
person you've heard from. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak under public input? And I'm trying to lean towards the non-builder, the non-owner, for whatever reason. Are you still Miss Hemingway?
Armstead.
I'm so sorry, Ms. Armstead. I knew you at a different time. Please come forward. Ms. Clarice Armstead.
Thank you.
Would you please give us your address?
Okay, my address is 1610 Race Path, but I also have 2 properties on 6th Avenue that is vacant. My objection is I know when the Safeway was open prior to this gentleman buying it. We had a lot of foot traffic. There was always shootings, robbings, stuff, and they run through 6th Avenue behind Bethel and disappear, whatever. So my problem is, if he's gonna sell beer and wine in the store, you have a church that is less than 50 or 75 feet across the street from this store. Then you have another church across Highway 501 directly in front of the store. I understand that he feels he cannot make a profit, or which I've heard, that he could make a profit by just selling gas. But considering that you have people going to this church, and then my church is like the next block over, you have Cherry Hill, which is another block over. I don't think that he should have this license for the beer and wine, because you have so many people going to their Bible studies there. This is going to be a long summer. These kids have been out of school for a long time. There's always something going on. And if he does open the store, are you going to have African Americans working in the store? Are you willing not to sell beer from, like, say, Friday to Monday mornings, so it wouldn't be a problem? I mean, there's a lot of things I think should be answered before we decide to do this.
And because you bring some good questions to bear, why don't we, I think it would be helpful if perhaps either Ms. Hyman or Mr. Emmerich speaks to what he's able to do by right. There's some misgivings about whether or not South Carolina alcoholic beverage laws come into play because of the proximity to the church, but beer and wine aren't covered. So if you could just do a general overview of what he would be capable of doing right now, if he met the building code. That would be
Yes.
helpful.
Yes, this use is already allowed in the existing building, and the proximity requirements come into play when liquor is being sold. But since it's just beer and wine, that is not something that would be regulated, the distance requirements. So he's already allowed, because the existing station, the parcel that it's on is highway commercial. This use is already allowed. This is just an extension of the site is what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you so much. Does that sort of answer some of your questions? Essentially, we can't restrict him from doing what by right is allowed in highway commercial. He can open a convenience store, he can sell beer and wine,
Correct.
He can do that 7 days a week.
That's right.
The only question that comes before the council is whether or not he can annex another portion of a lot that's behind him to build a cooler and leave more space between that residential lot and the next one, should somebody build on it. I think it's still vacant at this time.
It is.
Yes, okay. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? I believe, one of the questions that has been raised to me over and over again has to do with activity around a convenience store. I live in this city, and I know that there are convenience stores that have never brought about issues related to vagrancy, related to noise, related to trash, related to shootings, related to cars speeding. And there are others that tend to have a lot of that. And I understand that our applicant has some history of being the proprietor of convenience stores in other towns. And I thought that somebody was going to come before us today to talk about his experience in other places. I think while we still have our public here, that'd be a really good time to hear about that. Hey, Chief. I just asked that somebody speak to the research you've done relative to Mr. Patel's experience as a storekeeper in other places, as I sit and try to compare one convenience store versus another.
He does have a business in Georgetown City, and I have spoken with Chief Waits, who is the chief of police for Georgetown. He gives me a report that he is a good corporate neighbor, that they run a very good business there, good lighting, They cooperate with the police, they assist the police, they call the police when they have issues. That's kind of the difference that we have in the businesses here that we are having some nuisance issues with, is that they do not call us when they see problems. We're having to patrol and sit and try to fix those problems instead of the merchants trying to help us. That is not at all what I've been told, is that he does cooperate, that he does assist, that he wants his business to be very upright in the community.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Anyone else for public input? Mr. White? Well, no, but you can close public input.
No, I have something to say.
Okay, well, but we need to close public input before we do.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll close it.
All right. We have a motion.
I want them to close public.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion to close public input. Is there a second, Mr. Hammond? We have a properly seconded motion to close public input. At this time, all in favor, with show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. White, we'll hear from you.
A few questions. One is, we had some businesses that closed downtown, and I think the ordinance said something about if they were closed for over a certain period of time, they could not open back until they did something. Am I correct?
That's-
Would you clarify me on that?
Sure, it depends. They're considered non-conforming in different ways. It could be that the site's non-conforming or the use. This use is allowed, so they're conforming in that aspect, but they are non-conforming in some other aspects with landscaping and those sorts of site improvements that staff will work with them to make sure the technical review committee signs off on any site plan as they move forward.
May I offer an example?
I'm sorry.
May I offer an example?
Sure.
There were 2 or 3 businesses on the corner of 9th Avenue and 378 that are no longer in business.
Right.
They won't become businesses again because, for one thing, they don't have any parking.
Right.
There's no setback, there's no landscaping, there's just no opportunity
Right.
for that to happen. So those would fall into that category.
And if anything with this, they are trying to come more into conformity by purchasing this property and combining it. They're trying to expand and make those setbacks more conforming than they are now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. White.
And secondly, just as I stated about the previous item about the storage, this just does not fit the community need at this time. We have 3, this would be the 3rd gas in our, beer station in less than 3 blocks in that general area. There was recently on 16th, Ranger Road, that business opened up a liquor store right next to a church, right next to a daycare center. I don't think we, as in the community, we are being respected and having all these alcoholic businesses. And I used to own a liquor store on Granger Road. And before I could open, I had to make sure I went to every house on that street, publicized it in the newspaper that I was gonna open up, etc. Haven't seen any of this. No disrespect, you sir, but I'm just speaking for myself as a community. I live in that area. I frequent it all the time, and I don't think it's a need at this point in time.
Mr. Goldman, thank you.
Mr. Patel, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I heard this was coming up, I dropped my head in my hands and I shook my head because I'm like, here we go again. That place had been a mess, and not lately because of everything that we're going through, but I frequently ride on patrol with our officers, and we're all the time up at another establishment on 378, right across the highway. I'm not gonna name the name. And so I was not excited about this. But then I came to realize that, and I certainly understand Mr. White's position and respect it, but there's nothing the 7 of us can do to keep you from running a gas station. MC, can you go back to the pictures?
Sure.
There's nothing that we can do to keep you from selling beer. You have that legal right, and that is not in our hands. But if we allow you to bring in this 0.13 small little tiny lot, we can control how you renovate that property, because the property and the building now looks despicable. I mean, it just does. And so if I got to choose between the way it looks now and the way it will look, then I got to choose the way it will look. And I'll be honest with you, I wish it was mowed down. I wish it burned down. I wish it didn't exist. But I don't have that power. And neither do my 6 colleagues. And so, you know, if it's gonna be, I'd rather it be nice and landscaped. And I'd rather, if somebody's gonna have it, I'd rather it be somebody who's got a good track record of keeping the place cleaned up.
Well, I agree with Mr. Goldfinch. I mean, we can't unring a bell that's already in place. You have the legal rights to do this, and with or without this back lot, it's just, and I do believe this lot will add to the establishment, not take away from, but because of the landscaping, and I hope you'll do a really good job with that, because the neighbors deserve that. And also that I believe that we need to make the commitment that we can, if need be, suggest that our police chief monitor this and keep in close touch with what's going on, because I do agree it is near a lot of churches and I support all of that, but it's going to happen. And now, as William says, how is it going to happen? And we'd like to make it as nice as possible.
I don't disagree with Larry White at all. I wish we wouldn't have another beer and wine establishment. I really do. I know though that that's outside the hands of the city council. There might be some positives. We just talked about there being a food hole. What terminology did you use? A food desert. We were talking about a property that used to be Harvey's food store and how people in that area don't have a place to walk to get a loaf of bread or a dozen eggs. And we've got a big walking population without cars. It would be very decent to have a nice convenience store to get those things. It costs a little more, but you can still get to them. To go to a convenience store where there are no guns outside, where there are no vagrants hanging around, where people aren't shooting and running on Miss Armstead, where people aren't standing outside drinking and deciding what their next plan is going to be. If I could vote against, if the question was whether or not we need another place at Cherry Hill, Bethel, and the Fire Baptized Holiness Church, the name of which I forget, Mount Zion, I'd vote no. But that's not the question posed before us. It is simply whether or not you get to do it as is, or whether or not you get to buy additional property, make the 6th Avenue entrance of your property look better, more appealing to a residential area. I think that's the only question that is before us, and for that reason, I'm afraid I support you. Anyone else before I call a vote? There seems to be no other comments. Is there a motion? I know, not you. I know. Mr. Hyman.
I'll make a motion that we accept the
First reading, I needed to mention, yes. First reading. Yes.
I'll second.
Thank you so much. And to the public, I'll say this is first reading. If you know of information that we need to know before we confirm this in a second reading, that will happen on the 15th of June, I think you all know how to get in touch with us. I think all 3 of you have my personal number. We have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading of this ordinance to allow the purchase and commercial use of 1/1300ths of an acre of property immediately behind the old Safeway property on 6th Avenue. All in favor with a show of hands, please. 6 of us are in favor. Anyone opposed? 1 opposition. The motion carries with the 6 votes. and we'll come again on the 15th of June. Thank you so much. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public hearing and first reading of ordinance ZA 2020-0615A. Ordinance to annex approximately 2 acres of property located at 4092 Long Avenue Extension, TMS 11100002022. Pardon me, and request to rezone from Horry County Commercial Forest Agriculture CFA to City of Conway Rural Residential District. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this annexation request was submitted because this property recently changed ownership. And they have city water now, but they're wanting to tie into city sewer.
Thank you so much. How new is rural residential for us?
It's
I
not
don't
new, but we
remember
don't
hearing
have
it.
much of it. But the city limits are finally reaching those portions on the map that are shown as rural residential on the future land use map.
Now, as a real general overview, could you do one sentence of what distinguishes rural residential from R1 or
R1.
2 or?
Yeah, it's intended to provide for preservation and expansions of areas for very low residential, detached, single family, in a more rural character type area.
Does it allow for chickens, for example?
It does not. It does
Okay.
not.
Nope.
But the acreage, it requires larger acreage and setbacks than
Okay.
R1.
Okay, all right. I'm sure we'd like having that in the city. Not the chickens necessarily. I'm not making a point of that by any stretch. First of all, we'll entertain a public hearing. Ms. Tessier, has anybody called relative to this issue? Will staff make sure there's no one outside waiting to speak on this
Sure.
issue? Thank you.
This is 70. We're good.
Nobody? All right, so there's nobody present for the public hearing. Is there a motion, Mr. White?
I move that we close public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan? We have a properly seconded motion to close public hearing at this time. All in favor, show of hands. And Mr. Hammond, the motion carries unanimously. He read my mind. And now, does council have any comments or questions of staff before I ask for a motion to approve or disapprove? There seem to be none. Mr. White?
I move that we accept the first reading.
Thank you so much. We have a motion to approve first reading. Ms. Downs?
I second the motion.
We have a probably seconded motion to approve first reading. Is there any discussion? There being none, all in favor with show of hands, please. And this motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item C, public hearing and first reading of ordinance ZA 2020-0615B. An ordinance to rezone approximately 151 acres of property located between Highway 501 Business and Depot Road, PIN 36700000011, from Forest Agriculture, FA, to Mineral Mining Flexible District, MM, this time.
And I know we have the applicant and possibly some other folks.
Okay, we'll just wait for them to come in and settle. How do you do?
Yeah, I think there was 3
We're trying to adhere to some social distancing. So if you'll leave the chairs about where